terms from 6th and 7th grade. So exercise 1, solve the linear equation x plus 2 plus x plus 4 plus x plus 6 equals negative 28. We have to state the property that justifies the first step and why you chose it. So the first thing that I really notice about all this is that I have a bunch of x's. I have an x here, an x here, here, and here. So those are actually the same thing. If I want to put those all together, it's going to look like this: x plus x plus x plus x. And then I also have a positive 2, a positive 4, and a positive 6. And I can just put those in on the back side of this. Plus 4, plus 6, and that all equals negative 28. This kind of looks like one of the examples that we had in lesson 1 of module 4, if you want to jump back and take a look at it. But what we're actually going to be doing is using properties in order to make this look just a little bit nicer. So if I have x plus x plus x plus x, there's an easier way for me to write repeated addition. And the easier way to do that is with multiplication. So what I need to do here is use the commutative and the distributive properties in order to condense the equation a little bit. We need to decrease the number of terms in order to make it just a little bit nicer where we can work with it a little bit. So if I have this x plus x plus x plus x, the easier way for me to write that is just 4x. There are 4 x's. That means that x is going to be the exact same number throughout this entire equation. So if I have 4 times that same number, then x plus x plus x plus x is the exact same thing. So now I'm adding 2 plus 4 plus 6. So I would have 12. 4x plus 12 equals negative 28. Now this is just a little bit easier to work with now. So what I need to do from here is understand that my main focus, my main goal, is on the left side of this equation to get x by itself. So a lot of you from last year like to draw the wall right here, so we'll keep doing that. My equal sign needs to stay on that wall. And the reason I need to do that is to keep everything centered. I need to keep everything in order. So if I have 4x plus 12 equals a negative 28, I have to look at this first. And the easiest thing for me to move at the moment is this positive 12. Now, if I'm at a positive 12 on a number line, the easiest way for me to get back to 0 is to subtract 12. So I'm going to subtract 12 in order to take this and move it to the right side. And I'm going to do the same thing here. What I do on one side of the wall, I have to do the same thing on the other side. So if I go back to this left side over here, I have 4x plus 12 minus 12. Well, if I have a positive 12 and a negative 12, this is just going to go away and I end up with 0. So on the left side of this equation, what I have left? 4x. And that equals negative 28 minus 12, which means I'm going to be going farther away from 0. It's going to be getting a larger negative number. So what I have, negative 28 minus 12, I end up with negative 40. And now to solve for the x, what I have to do is the opposite operation, the inverse operation of multiplication, which is division. So on each side of the equation, I have to divide by 4. That gets rid of this. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So what I'm left with is x equals negative 40 divided by 4 is negative 10. Now, I have to justify the fact that negative 10 is correct. So the best way for me to do that is to go back to my original problem, the one that I created right here, the one that I condensed a little bit, and put in a negative 10 everywhere that I see an x. So if I do that, let me slide this over. I have 4x plus 12 equals a negative 28. Now all I'm doing is just double checking to make sure that this is going to be correct. Now everywhere that I see a x, I'm going to put a negative 10. So I'm going to put that right here. So 4 times negative 10 plus 12 equals negative 28. Now 4 times negative 10 is negative 40 plus 12, and that equals negative 28. And again, negative 40 plus 12, which means I'm going to be getting closer to 0. And that negative 40 plus 12 is equal to negative 28, equals negative 28. So therefore it is a true statement, and x does equal negative 10. Now I'm still on page 10, just moved down to exercise 2. Solve the linear equation 2 times the quantity 3x plus 2 equals 2x minus 1 plus x. Again, we have to state the property and why we chose that property for the first step. So the property that I'm going to be using is the distributive property. And the reason I'm going to be using the distributive property is because of this little section right here. I have 2 times the quantity 3x plus 2. So that means that I have to take this 2 and distribute it, multiply it, times each thing inside of the parentheses. Get this focused. I don't really understand why it does that at random times. So again, I'm just going to rewrite this just a little bit bigger so we can take a look at it. I have 2 times the quantity of 3x plus 2 equals 2x minus 1 plus x. So I take this 2, just like what I did up top, and I multiply it times each thing inside the parentheses. So I have 2 times 3, which is 6x. I got to bring that x along. Plus 2 times 2 is 4 equals, and again I can condense this, 2x and x. And if I condense those two, what I'm left with is a 3x. So I have 3x because I can add this and this together, that and that. So what I'm left with is minus 1. So 6x plus 4 equals 3x minus 1. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because before we only had a variable on one side of the equation. Now it's on the left and the right. So I'm going to have to move 2 different things. Now the easiest thing for me to move, as far as keeping everything positive or negative, is to take the 3x and move it to the left side of the equation. Okay, so because there is nothing here which tells me that it's negative, that means that this is a positive 3x. So if I have a positive 3x, the way that I move it to the other side of the equation is to subtract 3x from both sides. Okay, so 3x minus 3x is 0. Now I have negative 1 left on this side, and now I have 6x minus 3x, which is 3x, and I bring the positive 4 along. Now this looks a little bit more like what we had in our last example, in our last exercise. So now my sole purpose on the left side of this equation is to get x by itself. The easiest thing for me to do first is for me to move this positive 4 to the other side of the equation. And how do I do that? The inverse operation. The inverse operation of addition is subtraction. So I have to subtract 4 from each side. And whenever I do that, plus 4 minus 4 equals 0. So that goes away. what I'm left with on the left side of the equation is a 3x, and that equals -1 minus 4. So if I have -1 minus a 4, that means I'm getting farther away from 0, and I have a -5. So the next thing that I have to do is now get rid of this 3 next to the variable. And right now, that is multiplication. 3x means 3 times x. And so I have to divide both sides by 3. And whenever I do that, I get x equals -5/3. And if you would like to go back and substitute like what we did in exercise 1 to make sure that you're correct, then you can go ahead and do that at this point. So the left side of the equation, the first thing we had to do was the distributive property, and that gave us our 6x. 2 times 3x is 6x. Then we had the task of having 2 variables, one on each side, so we had to move one over in order to get variables on one side of the equation. Then solve for that variable. We ended up with x equals a -5/3. Alright, now on your own, we would like for you to take a look at page 11 and do exercise 4 only by yourself. See if you can manipulate the variables, get them on one side of the equation, get that variable by itself, and then solve for that variable. We also need you to state the property that justifies your first step. So remember, there's the addition property, there's the subtraction property, the multiplication, the division, the distributive property. All those kind of properties are what we're looking for. So exercise 4 on page 11. Try that one on your own. Alright, so here's some of the properties of equality that are on page 12 in your binder if you need to take a look at those. This is just a quick recap of what we've done for specifically lesson 4. Remember, if you have any questions at all, you need to write those down so you can remember them, so we can talk about those in class. Or if you would just like to write them down and throw them on our desk, and we'll be happy to get with you on those answers of the questions that you have. And remember, we are specifically looking for 3 different exercises that you have done on your own. In lesson 3, that was exercises 4 and 5, and in lesson 4, that was exercise 4. So make sure that you have attempted those, and we will be checking those tomorrow. So have a good night, guys.